I was born on Valentine's Day, and that's the reason they call me. My grandpa named me Valentino. Then my nickname is Tino. My mother's name was Nellie. Her maiden name was Walker. My dad's name was Burnett. Yeah, I was born in my grandma's home, but things got so bad that for $100, they lost that whole farm. They left here, we all did, and went to Pawhuska. When I lived in Pawhuska with them, I was just a baby. We stayed in Pawhuska for a few years and then came back to Round Springs. That's where we lived then. And that's where I grew up, really, down on Round Spring. Okay. I lived on the banks of the Round Springs Creek west of here for probably the biggest part of my young life. And it was a beautiful swimming pool. People came there from everywhere. We had games of all kinds going on there in the summertime. They had rooster fights and horse races and baseball games. It was a regular vacation spot for a lot of people. The guy that owned it, Round Springs, he would come down and put up a 2-room tent. He would come down and stay all summer. I'll tell you what we did mostly. In those days, the countryside was not, there weren't any fences, and it was called free range country. You could run your cattle out, and we did. We just turned them loose, and we'd go get them in when we got ready to milk them. A lot of people had stock running out, and us boys used to catch some old horses, and we'd ride them a lot. We rode horses, we rode cattle, we rode everything. And of course, in the summertime, we stayed in Round Spring. That was a deep, deep hole, and I dove down deep, deep a lot, but I never could dive to the bottom. I couldn't hold my breath that long. And cold, and we had our spring house there where we kept our milk and our cream and our butter. We had ropes off them trees and into the spring, yeah. We had a lot of fun there, except I told my sister one time, she's swinging out like this. I told her to drop, and she dropped. She couldn't swim a lick. That didn't sit too good with my mother. I went to school at Walker School. That's my grandpa's. They built a school named Walker in the name of my grandpa Walker. I walked from Round Spring to the school when I was little, and then they started school buses running and took us to Jay. I started probably in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, riding the school bus, and that was really one of the highlights of my school days, is riding the bus. And I always wanted to get on the bus. I loved this bus because that's where I had all of friends. Of course, we fought a little, but we had friends. In the summertime was our busy time, you know. We was always picking huckleberries, picking blackberries, selling them. We had a lot of berries in the country then. We get 25 cents a gallon for them. So we had to raise our food, all of it except we could sell berries and sell cream and eggs and stuff like that for our coffee and our sugar. There were little stores around about everywhere. There was two pretty close to us, small stores in those days. And if we wanted to sell an old hen or two hens, well, take them to the store, sell them eggs, you know. That's where we usually sold our produce. Right. We could buy 2 handfuls of candy for a nickel in those days. Real treat, man, that was great. I wouldn't trade any of my life for any part of another life. And I tell you another thing that was great at the time, and we didn't even have an ice cream freezer, but we froze ice cream. Somebody would bring us some ice from town, and they'd wrap it up in an old quilt and put it on the front bumper, and they'd bring a big block of ice, and we would make that ice cream up, and Mom would put that in gallon buckets with a handle on it, and we'd sit there and turn that like that until it would freeze on the edge of the bucket, and she'd scrape that off down in there. We'd go ahead and turn it and turn it. It seemed like an hour, but we had our ice cream that way. Then, of course, when they came out with a regular ice cream, boy, that was really great. We'd make sleds with a guide sled on the front. Pretty nice little sleds out of wood. And we'd have to drag them up the hill and maybe run down a little ways and drag them back. We used to do a lot of things with those sycamore trees. You could climb up in one of them things, and smaller ones about that big around, and get up to the top. You could bend that thing over and let go of it, and it'd just whip real good, you know. And we used to fight around with them. He had every vegetable you could dream of, and of course, Mom, she canned them up all for the winter. We gathered a lot of food in those days, and Mom would take them and can them, and we'd have grape juice, and we had plenty to eat. Of course, we didn't have everything we wanted, but so what? We had everything we needed.